ICJ to rule South Africa's request to order halt to Rafah offensive. 12 Palestinians killed in Israel shelling on a store. Good afternoon, you're watching World Today and I'm Renee Fong. The International Court of Justice will rule today on South Africa's request to order a halt to Israel's Rafah offensive in Gaza. Last week, South Africa had asked the ICJ, also known as the World Court, to order a halt to Israel's offensive in Gaza and in Rafah, in particular to ensure the survival of the Palestinian people. The demand for such an emergency measure is part of a larger case brought before the Hague-based court by South Africa accusing Israel of genocide. The court has previously rejected Israel's demand to throw out the case and has ordered it to prevent acts of genocide against the Palestinians, while stopping short of ordering a halt to Israeli military operations. South Africa asked for additional emergency measures to protect Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinians have been sheltering. It also asked the panel of 15 permanent judges to order Israel to allow unimpeded access to Gaza for UN officials, organizations providing humanitarian aid, journalists, and investigators. ICJ decisions have in the past been ignored. The top UN legal body has no way to enforce its decisions, but they carry international weight. A ruling against Israel could add to its political isolation after a series of setbacks this week. The United Nations has resumed transporting humanitarian aid arriving at a US-built pier off the coast of the Gaza Strip after deliveries were halted for 2 days because some truckloads of aid were intercepted by needy Palestinians. Aid deliveries began arriving at the US-built pier last Friday as Israel comes under growing global pressure to allow more supplies into the besieged coastal enclave, where it is at war with Hamas and a famine looms. The UN is coordinating aid distribution at the floating dock, but has remained adamant that aid deliveries by land are the most viable, effective and efficient way to combat the humanitarian crisis in the enclave of 2.3 million people. The UN has said at least 500 trucks a day are needed to enter Gaza. 10 truckloads of aid driven from the pier site by UN contractors were received last Friday at a World Food Programme warehouse in Deir el-Balah. However, on Saturday, only 5 loads made it to the warehouse after 11 others were intercepted. The UN halted transport for 2 days while it came up with a new route. Deliveries resumed on Tuesday with 17 trucks arriving at the warehouse, while on Wednesday there were 27 trucks. Some aid is for World Food Programme to distribute, while the rest is for other aid groups operating in Gaza. 12 Palestinians were killed when Israeli forces shelled a store belonging to the Welfare Ministry east of Deir al-Balah city in the central Gaza Strip on Thursday. According to Dr. Khalil al-Digran, 12 were killed, with most of them were women from Deir al-Balah. Dr. Khalil added the shelling was intentional by the Israeli army tanks. Most of the bodies were burnt and more than 30 wounded in the attack were taken to Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah. He added that the hospital, the only one left in central Gaza, could stop functioning due to lack of fuel for the generators. Israeli tanks advanced in Rafah's southeast edge towards the city's western district of Yibna and continued to operate in 3 eastern suburbs. Simultaneous Israeli assaults on the northern and southern edges of Gaza this month have caused a new exodus of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fleeing their homes. The assaults have also cut off the main access routes for aid, raising the risk of famine among the displaced Palestinians. Moving on to Iran, where its President Ibrahim Raisi was buried in the holy city of Mashhad as thousands of mourners packed its streets for his funeral 4 days after he died in a helicopter crash. The burial ceremony was attended by Iranian government and military officials as well as religious personalities. Flowers were thrown at his coffin as it moved slowly aboard a truck through throngs of mourners to be buried at the gold-domed Imam Reza Shrine, Iran's holiest Islamic site. Raisi hailed from Mashhad, 900 kilometers east of Tehran. Earlier, thousands paid their respects as his coffin was driven in a motorcade through the eastern city of Bijan. Iran proclaimed 5 days of mourning for Raisi, who was widely seen as a candidate to succeed 85-year-old Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, who wields ultimate power in Iran. Mohammad Mokber, who had been first vice president, is serving as interim president until a June election. Raisi died on Sunday alongside his foreign minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian and 6 others after their helicopter went down in the country's mountainous northwest while returning from a dam inauguration on the border with Azerbaijan. The UN General Assembly voted to establish an annual day of remembrance for the 1995 Srebrenica genocide despite furious opposition from Bosnian Serbs and Serbia. The resolution written by Germany and Rwanda received 84 votes in favor, 19 against, with 68 abstentions, and makes 11th July International Day of Remembrance of the Srebrenica genocide. In addition to establishing the memorial date, the resolution condemns any denial of the genocide and urges UN member countries to preserve the established facts. In a letter to other UN members, Germany and Rwanda described the vote as a crucial opportunity. However, there has been a furious response from Serbia and the Bosnian Serb leadership. In an attempt to defuse tensions, the authors of the resolution added, at Montenegro's request, that culpability for the genocide is individualized and cannot be attributed to any ethnic, religion or other group or community as a whole. Bosnian Serb forces captured Srebrenica on 11th July 1995, a few months before the end of Bosnia's civil war. In the following days, Bosnian Serb forces killed around 8,000 Muslim men and teenagers, a crime described as a genocide by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and the International Court of Justice. A Russian delegation led by chairman of the Russian-North Korea-friendly parliamentary group, Grigory Rapota, held a meeting with North Korean officials in Pyongyang. In footage provided by North Korea's official news agency KCNA, the Russian delegation, including Rapota and Russian ambassador to Pyongyang, Alexander Matsagora, were seen greeting the chairman of North Korea's Supreme People's Assembly, Park In-chol, at the Mansuet Assembly Hall. Rapota arrived in Pyongyang on Monday and held a meeting with his North Korean counterpart, Ri Chol, who also serves as president of the Academy of Medical Science under the Ministry of Public Health, ahead of the meeting with Park, duration between Russia and North Korea. That was in Asia. Now to Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron said more talks were needed on proposed voting reforms that triggered deadly riots in New Caledonia. Macron is on a visit to the Pacific territory in a bid to ease tensions. Since 13th May, looting, arson and clashes have left 6 people dead and hundreds injured. The unrest erupted over a French voting reform plan.
Quatrièmement, je ferai d'ici un mois, au maximum, un point d'étape pour regarder en conscience les choses et prendre les décisions sur la suite institutionnelle à donner. Et je considérerai évidemment le retour au calme, mais également l'engagement sincère des parties à la reprise des négociations en vue d'un accord.
Macron said Caledonians would be asked to vote on their future if leaders can reach an overarching agreement. The French Parliament's lower house had approved the voting reform, but final ratification was still needed. New Caledonia has been ruled from Paris since the 1800s, but many indigenous Kanaks still resent France's power over their islands and want fuller autonomy or independence. France had planned to give voting rights to thousands of non-indigenous long-term residents, something Kanaks say would dilute their vote's influence. French authorities have imposed a state of emergency, placed separatist leaders under house arrest, banned alcohol sales, and sent around 3,000 troops, police, and other security reinforcements to quell the turmoil. Up next, 9 killed and 78 others wounded in election rally. Stay with us. The roof of a restaurant in Spain's popular tourist island of Mallorca collapsed, killing at least 4 people and injuring 21 others. An emergency services spokeswoman said that several nationalities were among the victims. The emergency services said 7 of the victims were in a very serious state and 9 others had serious injuries, with different hospitals admitting them. Local media said the 2-story building was in the Playa de Palma area to the south of the Mediterranean island's capital, Palma de Mallorca. Firefighters were deployed in number while ambulances whisked the victims to hospitals, and the street was sealed off by police. Rescuers were continuing to work at the scene to find further people stuck under the rubble. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez conveyed his condolences to the victims' families after what he called a terrible collapse. The central government was prepared to send all the necessary resources to help the regional authorities cope with the incident. Mallorca is one of Spain's Balearic Islands with pristine waters and beaches that attract more tourists than all Spanish regions after Catalonia. According to official figures, more than 14 million tourists visited the islands last year. More on tragic news. An election rally in northern Mexico descended into tragedy after a gust of wind sent the stage carrying into the crowd, killing at least 9 people, including a child. At least 78 other people were injured in the accident. Lights and a giant screen toppled onto the stage as presidential candidate Jorge Alvarez Manes and members of his Citizens Movement party ran from the falling debris. Presidential longshot Manes, who escaped without serious injury, said the structure was brought down by gusting winds that lasted 5 minutes. He said the incident was not a predictable climate phenomenon as has been speculated, and he called for absolute transparency in the investigation. Mexico's Meteorological Service had warned of heavy rain, wind gusts of up to 70 kilometers per hour and possible tornadoes in Nuevo León and other northern states on Wednesday night. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said the incident must be investigated, while offering his condolences to those impacted as well as the political party. He also said most of the victims were women, without giving further details. On 2nd June, Mexicans will vote for a new president as well as members of Congress, several state governors and local officials. Here's a heads up on Mother Nature. The North Atlantic hurricane season, which starts on 1st June, is forecast to be extraordinary, with up to 7 storms of Category 3 or higher is expected. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration cited warm Atlantic Ocean temperatures and conditions related to the La Nina weather phenomenon in the Pacific for the expected increase in storms. It said human-caused climate change was warming oceans and melting ice on land, leading to sea level rises that worsen storm surges.
For the range of storms expected, NOAA calls for the following: 17 to 25 named storms with a top sustained wind of at least 39 miles per hour. Of these, 8 to 13 are forecast to become hurricanes with maximum sustained winds of at least 74 miles per hour. and 4 to 7 are forecast to become major hurricanes, that is Category 3 to 5, with maximum sustained winds of at least 111 miles per hour. Of note, the forecast for named storms, hurricanes, and major hurricanes is the highest NOAA has ever issued for the May outlook.
The North Atlantic hurricane season runs from early June to late November. Oceanic heat in the tropical Atlantic Ocean and Caribbean Sea creates more energy to fuel stronger storms, which can be devastating in both human and material terms, particularly in the U.S. South. Mother Nature's not done, and this is apparent in Brazil as heavy rains once again pounded parts of Brazil's southernmost state on Thursday, ruining days-long cleanup efforts and flooding areas which had previously been untouched in Rio Grande do Sul's capital city of Porto Alegre. Record flooding over the past month has killed 163 people and displaced around 600,000 more, with another 64 people still missing. Rains had lightened up to a drizzle over the past few days, with stores beginning to open and residents working to rebuild. However, the skies opened once more on Thursday morning, dumping heavy rains and flooding areas of Porto Alegre all over again. One daycare in the neighborhood of Menino Deus, which had reopened on Wednesday after a week-long cleanup, was forced to evacuate as the rains rushed in. According to data from the National Meteorological Institute, in a span of 12 hours, parts of Porto Alegre received more rains than they typically do in a whole month. Earlier this week, the city of Porto Alegre had asked residents to leave their trash out on the sidewalk to be thrown away. However, the fresh rains carried the trash out onto the street, clogging drains and worsening the flooding. Porto Alegre Mayor Sebastião Melo says the city was not surprised by the downpour, but that it was excessively heavy. At least one person was killed while 33 others were injured in a powerful explosion at a gunpowder and fireworks factory on the outskirts of the Colombian capital, Bogota. It was unclear what set off the explosion at the factory, as the Colombian authorities said the incident was still under investigation. Emergency medical personnel and firefighters swarmed the scene after receiving a distress call from the public. A huge column of greyish smoke rose above the industrial town of Soacha late in the afternoon. The powerful blast also blew out the windows of nearby homes. According to local media reports, the explosion rocked the factory just before 4:38 p.m. local time. About 150 factory workers were evacuated from the premises after the explosion. Some story at home. Malaysia and Hong Kong have agreed to collaborate in the field of technical and vocational education and training, TVET, as well as the economy for mutual benefit. Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Sri Dr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi said it was agreed upon during his meeting with Hong Kong Special Administrative Region Chief Executive John Lee Ka-chiu.
Di Hong Kong, beberapa politeknik dan sekolah-sekolah teknikal TVET ini sangat-sangat berjaya di dalam mengendalikan khusus-khusus, terutama dalam bidang-bidang baharu yang juga sedang diterokai dan dimulakan di Malaysia, dan mereka bersedia untuk membantu dengan memulakan training for trainers, iaitu menghantar tenaga pengajar kita bagi mendapat latihan di Hong Kong dan diikuti juga dengan exchange student program.
Datuk Sri Dr. Ahmad Zahid said the decisions also included the establishment of a trade and economy office by the Hong Kong government in Kuala Lumpur, as well as efforts to increase the involvement of fund managers from the Special Administrative Region in Bursa, Malaysia. He explained that having the office in Kuala Lumpur can facilitate business transactions, administrative matters and financial affairs in Malaysia. The Deputy Premier said the meeting also touched on Islamic tourism and the halal industry.
saya telah memberikan beberapa indikasi untuk kita membantu mereka, terutamanya melalui persatuan-persatuan Muslim di Hong Kong ini untuk persijilan halal dapat kita bantu mereka, dan tindakan susulan saya harap dapat dilakukan dengan pihak Halal Development Corporation dan juga pihak JAKIM.
On tourism aspects, Datuk Sri Dr. Ahmad Zahid revealed that the government will increase the numbers of flights for tourists from Hong Kong to Malaysia. He noted that there has been an increase of more than 1,200% in tourist arrivals from Hong Kong to Malaysia. He said the tourists are not only heading to Kuala Lumpur but also Pulau Pinang, Sabah and Sarawak. The pace of inflation in Japan slowed in April by 2.2% as gas bills fell, with the figure remaining above the Bank of Japan's 2% target. According to data released by the Japanese government, the consumer price index CPI, excluding volatile fresh food prices, eased from a 2.6% year-on-year rise in prices logged in March by the Internal Affairs Ministry. Friday's figure was in line with market expectations and comes as the weak yen continues to inflate prices for imported goods in Japan, while the United States and other major economies have battled sky-high inflation in recent years. Price rises in Japan have been less extreme. The Bank of Japan, BOJ, has continued its ultra-loose monetary stimulus policies to banish stagnation and deflation, as well as targeting sustainable inflation of 2%. In March, the BOJ hiked borrowing cost rates for the first time since 2007 and scrapped the world's last negative interest rate. Other major central banks, including the Federal Reserve and the United States, have much higher interest rates, and the wide differential has added pressure on the yen. The Japanese currency has hit 3-decade lows against the dollar in recent weeks. A weaker yen is good for Japanese exporters and foreign visitors, but it makes imports and foreign travel for outbound tourists more expensive. Very exciting update in sports. National para-jumper makes golden debut on world stage. Stay tuned for details. Starting off with a sports segment this afternoon, national para-athlete Mohammad Nazmi Nasri has taken less than 2 years to make his presence felt on the international stage when he captured the men's long jump T37 category gold medal at the 2024 World Para-Athletics Championships in Kobe, Japan yesterday. His effort of 6.13 meters at the Kobe Universiade Memorial Stadium not only confirmed the gold medal in his debut at the prestigious championships, it also eclipsed his previous personal best of 5.74 meters. Greece's Konstantinos Kamaras took silver with a clearance of 6.01 meter, while Brazil's Matias Evangelista Cardoso settled for bronze with a similar effort. The 21-year-old Mohammad Nazmi, who is partially disabled on the left side, including his foot and hand, did not expect to clinch the goal, as he admitted to being overwhelmed by the presence of other athletes before the championships began. With his victory, Malaysia now have 2 gold medals, with 2016 Rio Paralympic champion Muhammad Ziad Zulkifli clinching the first gold in the men's shot put F20 on Wednesday.
And the complete Asian Games champion.
Now let me take you to the badminton court, onto the Malaysia Masters Open. Malaysia's top men's singles shuttler Lee Zhiqiang cruised into the quarterfinals after beating India's rising player Kiran George. The world number 10, who is gunning for his maiden title on his home soil, will face his friend and 2024 Malaysia Open champion Anders Antonsen of Denmark today. In the action at Axiata Arena, Zhiqiang seemed to have no problem in facing Kiran when he took only 44 minutes to down the world number 36 player 21-13, 21-18.
To be honest, I pun sudah start penat. Starting from the 15 points sana, boleh nampak dia terus ambil few points kan. So bagi saya, I just told myself that keep patient lah. It's been 3 years. I think this is my first quarter final also in Malaysia. Bagi saya satu breakthrough lah bagi saya. And yes, of course tomorrow will be a tough match lagi lah.
In 7 previous encounters between Zijia and Antonsen, the Dane had emerged victorious 5 times, including in the last match at the Japan Masters in November. Earlier second seed Antonsen eliminated his compatriot Magnus Johansson 21-12 and 21-10 to book his quarterfinals slot. In the meantime, national men's doubles Aaron Chia and So Wei-Yik survived a scare before they could book a spot in the quarterfinals after putting down Chinese doubles Chen Boyang and Liu Yi. In the 50 minutes match, Aaron and Wei-Yik had to work hard as the game was dragged into rubber set before sealing their victory 21-13, 13-21 and 21-10. They will next meet South Korea's Jin Yong and Na Sung Seong next. The host is well represented in the men's doubles event as 3 other pairs, Go Zhifei and Nur Izzuddin Muhammad Rumsani, Wan Muhammad Arif Shaharuddin, Wan Junai Didan and Roy King Yap, and Man Wei Chong and T Kai Won also reached the quarterfinals. Now let's move on to football. Saudi Pro League champions Al Hilal saw off relegation threatened Al Thai 3-1 in Riyadh on Thursday as Neymar is set to miss the start of the next Saudi Pro League season as he recovers from a serious knee injury. It was very clear from the first whistle that Al Hilal will dominate the entire game. They secured a 2-0 lead before going into the breakthrough Salim Al-Dawsari and Michael. Into the second half, Brazilian Malcolm extended the lead for the hosts to 3-0 in the 60th minute. Al Thai, however, did manage to pull one back as a mere consolation through Andre Cordia. It was too late for the Hyle-based club as they dropped to 16th in the league standings and into the relegation zone, a point behind Aba. And in another match, second place Al Nassr could only salvage a 2-2 draw against Al Riyadh. Otavio's deflected shot opened the scoring for Al Nassr before the hosts struck back through Andre Gray and Muhammad Al Akil to go into the break 2-1 up. Cristiano Ronaldo's side were then reduced to 10 men in the 63rd minute following a red card to Aymeric Laporte for hitting Al Akil's arm. However, they were able to find a late equalizer courtesy of Meshari Al-Nemer in stoppage time to stop Al Nassr from bagging 3 points home. And that wraps up well today. In our top story, ICJ to rule South Africa's request to order halt to Israel's offensive on Rafah. Do join us tonight at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM for more news. Or you could also stream online on RTM Click's website and mobile app. Till then, I'm Renee Fong. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Have a pleasant afternoon.